Sin always has consequences. Even though God forgives you and he takes away the penalty for your sin, he does not take away the consequences of your sin. We are going to see exactly that on the podcast today. We're looking at 2 Samuel 13 to 15. And really, to understand the entire thing, you need to remember 2 Samuel 12:11. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in sight of this sun. For you did this secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. This is what Nathan says to David in response to David's sin. So God forgives David for his sin when he repents, but consequences are going to mar the rest of his kingdom.
Kingdom.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. This story was real strange to me. There's a lot of names going on. If you actually listen to the reading, some of them are really hard to pronounce, and I have made a royal fool of myself. So this story kind of gave me a couple flashbacks to stories that we have read previously in Genesis 34 when we were talking about the defiling of Dinah, who was the daughter of Leah and Jacob. So when she was taken advantage of, her brothers kind of rallied around her and went and killed the entire group of people that were associated with the person who took advantage of her. What's interesting about this story is that Tamar is a daughter of David, who immediately I'm like, okay, well, David's going to totally be enraged by this. He's going to go and figure out who this is. Similarly to what happened in the Genesis 34 story where the brothers were so angry. But what's crazy is that Amnon, David's son, who did this to his sister, has absolutely no remorse, sends her out and is just get away from me. But Absalom, the other brother, is whoa, this is messed up. So I guess Absalom does, he feels the need to, avenge his sister. He's really upset about this. But what surprised me the most is that David just, he knows the situation and doesn't do anything about it. So Absalom takes things into his own hands. He, gets rid of Amnon completely because he is just, so enraged by this. But as a result, David is more concerned with the fact that Amnon is dead and not necessarily that his daughter was taken advantage of by the dead son. It just seems there's so many weird, imbalances of justice in this situation. And it just it makes me so frustrated on so many different levels.
So it can be confusing. So just to take a second and catch you up.
It's Bible, soap operas.
It is sort of that way. David, in this story, David has many sons, but in this story, we're considering two sons. Amnon is the crown prince of Israel. He's supposed to be the next king. Mm-hmm. Absalom is another brother from another mother. And Tamar is most likely his sister. So this is still scandalous. I don't want to make it seem like it's not scandalous, but Amnon is not trying to sleep with his biological sister. It's a half-sister. It's still nasty, which is why Tamar is hey, this has never been done in all of Israel. This is not okay. And so he takes advantage of her, and then Absalom is out to get him. David most likely is just sort of in a haze because of his own sin and his own issues. This does take place across a couple years. Absalom actually waits for 2 years before he kills Amnon. Mm-hmm. So Absalom's totally chill with just waiting until the right time. And quickly Absalom becomes very popular in Israel, and David just seems to not take his kingdom very seriously at all. He is mad about it. He is frustrated by it. But you get a sense of just there's some weird stuff going on in David. I think it probably started before the sin with Bathsheba, but now he's definitely a different dude. Mm-hmm. So he is forgiven for his sin. God has made him right in his sight. But there are consequences, and those consequences are playing out, and they're significant.
Mm-hmm. We have to imagine, too, in each one of their scenarios, I don't really have a lot of grace for Amnon at all. I don't actually care about him.
Yeah.
But you have to think about Absalom, they all probably have these really warring thoughts in their heads. He wants to defend his sister, but at the same time, there's so much at stake too. Okay, well, he's the king or the upcoming or next king. what's going to happen with Dad if I go and kill his son. David's probably very similar boat. Like, oh my word, my son, the one that's supposed to be king, just screwed up so bad. And like, I don't know. It's so weird. I feel like there's a lot of like warring things. It should be so simple and so black and white, but it actually ends up that they are just so conflicted about the whole situation. Ugh.
So to deal with the situation, basically David says, like, Absalom, I don't ever want to see you again. Get out of here. You're banished.
Because he killed Amnon.
Correct. And then Joab, who has been a pretty sharp dude up until this point, kind of devises this scheme where this
Can you explain who Joab is? He didn't end
Joab
up on our cool
is
little
David's
illustration.
like prized military advisor.
Okay, thank you.
Joab is a fighting guy. He's one of the mighty men. He's
Oh,
one of the
yes,
Avengers. And so he gets this woman who's essentially an actress to put a hypothetical situation before David to get David to make the right decision about Absalom. So it's very similar to Nathan and the story of the poor man and his sheep. Joab is basically doing the same thing Nathan did. And so David hears this woman. He gets very upset. He wants to see the right thing done, but it's hypothetical. It's not even real.
Yeah.
And the woman then and Joab are like, see, you need to bring Absalom back into your home.
I could not understand the connection when we were reading. It was like, today's read did not read super well
It was a little
either.
bit
Like,
tricky.
it's hard to understand what's going on at certain points, but that makes a lot more sense. So Joab is actually kind of just like stepping in, but he's kind of being sneaky weird about it too.
I mean, he's going before a king. Like he needs to
Right.
he needs to be wise about what he's doing. But he does win out, and he did deceive David to some degree, just like Nathan had. But then David allows Absalom to come back into his presence. And even when that happens, like David kisses him on the head, which restores Absalom to being allowed to be around, basically.
Yeah.
But even reading through the restoration, it's like, this is kind of weird. It's a little tense.
I
And
mean, as it probably would be.
right.
Like, just humanity and facing those situations makes sense.
So shortly after Absalom is restored by David, this goes into chapter 15, he gets right to work on coming up with a scheme to overthrow David, and he's not messing around.
So I wonder why, like, after his dad allowed him to come back, why is he still, like, pretty gung-ho of, like, still, I don't know, running him into the dirt anyway?
There seems to be a degree of definitely justice for his sister. He actually names his daughter Tamar. Most likely,
Yeah, and that was confusing too. I'm like, wait.
he most likely names his daughter after his sister, so he holds Tamar in very high regard. But he also has definitely some ambition in him. I think he also has some goofy advisors that tell him to do weird things. But he is ambitious, and you can see him, like, when people come to speak to the king and get, like, a judgment, he talks to them instead. And every time he talks to them instead, he's basically just trying to win
It was
people's
like building
loyalty.
trust over with people.
But not to be nice, so that he can eventually build an army. And so chapter 15 ends with Absalom basically like crossing the Rubicon, coming in to take over Jerusalem, and David fleeing the city so that the city does not get destroyed. You actually see the priests like carrying the ark out. The officials are leaving. People who had recently joined the kingdom, David saying, like, get out of here, go home, like, it'll be safe for you. So this has all fallen apart in a very short amount of time, relatively speaking. And it is tied, at least as far as the Bible is concerned, to David's sin with Bathsheba.
So I have a question. Like, what is the percentage-wise of Israel at this point that has followed Absalom that David is so concerned?
It doesn't really say the percentage, but it's enough that they drive an army into the city.
Yeah.
So
See, like, so that to me, it's like, okay, Israel is divided, but how divided are they? Like, enough so that he's like, okay, we need to get out of here.
yeah.
That must be pretty intense.
Yeah, and it's really intense because it's only a couple chapters ago that we heard God promise David that he would be a king of a lasting dynasty that would reign forever if he obeyed. He has not obeyed
Well, I guess
super
too,
well.
like, how does that obedience play out in these chapters? Well, I don't know,
Well-
because he definitely didn't like rise to the occasion of defending his daughter either.
We will start to see David relying on the will of the Lord a lot more
Well, that's good.
in the coming days. But David is not. I think we have a pretty glossy picture of David. I mean, how many times have you heard the story of David and Bathsheba, and like the resolution of the story is like, and God forgave him because he was repentant. Like, you don't ever go into, and the kingdom was thrown into a civil war and his sons tried to kill each other. Like, this is the full story, and the full story has a lot of weight in it. It wasn't that long ago that we saw Saul being judged and the kingdom taken from him. We read all those psalms that were like royal psalms praising the reign of David. And so things have changed, and things have changed quickly.
So I think for today, when we're thinking about our own personal sins and the consequences that may have shown up in our own lives, whether it be a situation, maybe not as drastic as David, but if there is if there's distance between you and someone, whether it be a friend or a family member, as a result of sin, consider how maybe this could be like a jumping off point to resolving that issue, because obviously the consequences of this sin that we see today is just like absolute ruin. And it's interesting how sin can do the same thing, maybe not as a kingdom consequence, but like relationship consequences and harbored feelings over time. So maybe consider this today as just an encouragement to maybe start making those relationships stronger or open to resolution, as like an encouragement or like I said, like a jumping off point for you today. I don't know how that looks for your own personal life, but I know that we're all dealing with something. So anyway, thanks for joining us today. I encourage you with your part, and we will be back to this story of David tomorrow.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.